improves the performance of that team, or improves the performance of that company, or makes a difference to the customers. And what I've learned is it is a tough message to sell to people, because we've got used to it being for us, I think, up until 21. And I genuinely believe that if organisations maybe during induction sessions said, you know, maybe this is how it's been up until now, but whilst we're prepared to invest and support and bring you on, we will be asking you questions in 3 or 6 or 9 or 12 months' time about what is it doing for us, what is it doing for the customer, what is it doing for your team. And I don't think we're very clever at that. And we've written a white paper on this subject and we've called it the paradigm shift. But if I'm honest, I think we should have called it, it's a gradual illumination of minds, because it doesn't happen overnight. And in some companies where they've got some good people very receptive to ROI and measurement and accountability, it does take, it's a slog. It's a real slog to get them there. But I have to say, if there's one thing and one tip so far from the slides I've covered, it's could your organisation work on that basis and get them to understand that up from now, it's not just about them. Your expectations are that there's added value in a number of areas. They won't like it. If you went onto our website, there's a DVD on the website and it talks about how 12 months after a leadership programme I was interviewing managers about what they were doing. Now, I can't use the language that some of these managers shared with me when they see me coming back again to track the effect, but the lady on the DVD on the site makes it fairly clear they weren't happy to see me, because they told me, Patrick, will you, because we finished that a year ago. And I'm saying, well, I'm just trying to finish the report on the level of application and the effect it's made. And they're saying, what? That's not what we're used to. And I said, but you're going to get used to it, you know. But now that firm, if we do stuff for them and we're looking for data at the front end, back end, etc., those managers are much more inclined to do it. Whereas at the beginning, you know, a couple of years ago, it was a bit like pulling teeth, because they saw the intervention as the cornerstone. And like I said, we class that as peripheral. Okay, and basically, you mentioned at the back that it's complicated and it is timely. Now, I do understand some of that, but the way we've managed to improve the levels of accountability in organisations is we built that system in 2003. We worked at Coventry University and we had £1.5 million worth of funding to train 800 managers across the Midlands. And whilst we got 800 managers on a programme over 3 years, when we were writing it up, it was ILM level 3, when we were writing it up and they came from 200 companies, we couldn't track the effect in those firms, which is why we decided to leave the university, set GPSVision up, and we built this system which does make the measurement and the ability to produce reports at the back end much easier. And crudely speaking, if I can just talk you through this, although you've got 6 areas, the first 3, starting from evaluation to target, it's a bit about diagnostics and target setting. So for any of our customers, what we would say is, if you want to increase the accountability of different people, you need to know what's evaluation for us. If you went on our website and clicked on this, it expands it. But basically, evaluation is what's working and what isn't. In a nutshell, we'll get called in to do a coaching program, and we'll say to them, before we even start, can we just go back one stage, what's working and what isn't? And we start to look at the key performance indicators and where they're not satisfied with performance against them. And then the second phase is, if they identify who can plug them, then what we would say is, what do they currently know? And so we would do some benchmarking on them. The performance managers might do it, they questionnaire systems or whatever. And then after we've done, what does the firm want out of it and what are the people capable of? Then we would say the target setting is, what would success look like maybe in a year's time? How would you know that this is delivered? Okay, and so you can see how much further we're getting already from the happy sheet, because the person who comes on the program then, so the solution is developed to plug those gaps that have been identified at steps, evaluation, benchmarking and target. And the other thing we would make sure is, most interventions, unless they're supported with some learning transfer strategies, line management, engagement, etc., the level of application is limited. But if we pair up the intervention and the transfer and it works well, when they get to the measurement, it's much more successful. And so actually, whilst that might sound tricky, if you run through that process, it is much easier at the back end to know where you've got to. If you don't capture it at the front, you've got no chance. And then really, this is the final part of our revenge in effect is the sense that I don't mind standing there at 5 o'clock or our colleagues being measured on how that day has gone. But I want that organisation to measure a few other players as well. So it's not just Wayne Rooney that gets measured, so do his colleagues. But again, these, apart from the learning and development professionals, these in our experience are the key stakeholders. And I wouldn't mind, just out of interest, again what we've learned in some of our customers, they sit very much in what you see in the red column, in the middle. But we're gradually trying to switch them to what we see on the right. A quick show of hands, I mean, how would you, your organisation, a quick show of hands, how many people might believe that some of their stakeholders would sit in that column under the today, under the red column? Quick show of hands. Put them right up, I can't see them at that height, thank you very much, yeah. And what about somewhere in the middle? Or anybody at the end, at the right hand side in the green? No? And again, as you will know, and we know, it is tough to move them from the left to the right, but that's what we do. And it doesn't always make us very popular, because I get a hard time from some people who just want us to give them what they want. I have a cousin in Ireland who said to me, the problem with you, Patrick, is you're trying to give them what they need. If you give them what they want, they don't need convincing. And I'd say to him, I know what you're saying, but I'm not interested in that, or we're not interested in that. So anyway, just a quick question. On the first one, is anybody familiar with William Glasser's work about retention of information? William Glasser did some research and he tried to identify how much information people would retain on the basis of listening to it, reading it, seeing it, practicing it, or sharing it. And he showed that 95%, you could achieve 95% retention levels if they shared it. So, maybe unluckily so, for people we would work with, we would ensure there's a system in place that as soon as they venture back, there is an opportunity, maybe within a week or so, for them to talk to their colleagues about what they were doing, what was interesting, what they think they might be able to use, and what help they might need from their boss or their colleagues to allow them to do something with it over the short, medium and long term. And I think if you look at Glasser's work about retention, 95%, our evidence when we try and measure retention, so we might test people on their understanding of certain theories or models and some of the programs, if they've been back and shared it with colleagues, funny enough, it seems to stick. And so I would, again, these are the key things we would certainly strongly see if you can build into your programs. The second one is, last year I spoke at the World of Learning about engaging line managers, and in order to do that we did some research on what line managers were doing, and unfortunately most line managers were spending 2.5 days in meetings, nearly 1.5 days on emails, and they needed about 2 to 2.5 hours to sort their week out. So that left them with 2-3 hours to do anything else, or to work with their team and to work with their people. And sadly, we know that the support for people to improve what they do with the learning, or even carry out reviews, performance reviews, gets squeezed. You know, and some of our bigger customers, they've got some reasonable systems in place for performance reviews and management and embedded learning, but they take second place. They'd sit in a meeting for 2.5 days a week, almost at the cost of trying to help their people improve the level of application. Now the good news in that set, in those statistics though, was 50% of the topics discussed in those meetings was classed as irrelevant. So what we say to our managers is, go to every second one, or if it's due from 9 till